What's up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. Today we are out at Pinson Disc Golf Course with another beginner battle, testing out who's got the better gyro, Innova or MVP. But before we dive in, I have to ask the most important question of the day. How are you doing today, Rick? Are you having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
All right, for those of you who did not catch our first beginner battle, this series is all about taking discs that might be recommended for beginners, pitting these two Frisbees together to see which one gets the Robbie C BFB Best for Beginners stamp of approval, to see which one I would say, if you are a beginner checking this out, I would definitely recommend this one. And the first installment of this, we did 1 speeds with the Glitch versus the Beetle, and I don't know if I want to continue this, but I thought it'd be a fun little challenge. We are moving up to 2 speeds today, and we have the MVP Watt as well as Innova's XT Nova. Now, just a few facts about these two discs before we get started and diving in. We gotta know, hey, how long have these discs been around? The Watt is a newer disc by MVP that was approved by the PDGA on March 21st, 2022. So, although it's just starting getting a lot of traction this year in 2023, it was actually approved last year. Its flight numbers are 2, 5, -0.5, and 0.5. So you could argue that it comes out to like a 2500. Now, to tell you about this other disc, we have to take you back to 2012. There's this guy from California who was pretty okay at throwing Frisbees and happens to luck his way into a world championship title. Obviously hyperbole. Paul McBeth is pretty good at disc golf, and he did not luck his way into 2012. But this man, Paul McBeth, signs with Innova Champion Discs, and he is trying to throw these AVRs super straight, and they wanted to give him a disc that might make that job a little easier. And in 2013, they approved the Nova. Now, the Nova was an interesting mold in that it has a different core than the outer plastic, which is more rubbery. You can even see on the bottom here how it is joined to the disc. Paul would fall in love with this disc and end up using it to win 4 straight world titles before heading off to Discraft in 2019. And then obviously the Nova started falling off in popularity. Now, when the Watt came out by MVP, a lot of people said that it replaced their Glitch because it comes in more of a max weight option and it's still straight, super point and click. And that is what the Nova has always been, but some people can't really get over the hand feels. So that's what today's battle is all about. We're gonna play 5 holes, and I wanna give a shout out to one of my comments in the first beginner battle that talked about maybe you should have 2 of each disc, so that way you can throw and get an actual feel on the line versus, oh, that was just a lucky shot, or that was a bad shot. So we're gonna play 5 holes, hopefully looking at 5 different lines to give these things a chance to fly and see which one gets the BFB stamp of approval. Hole 1 comes in, it says at 264 feet. There are few lies that are as strong as saying that this is 264 feet. Definitely not. So for our XT Novas, one thing that I'm going to go ahead and point out is that the more modern XT Novas that have been made, the plastic of this centerpiece seems to get a little cheaper by the day. And so I've heard a lot of complaints about these hitting trees and exploding. So I have some older XT Novas that still have the Paul McBeth stamp on them. Those are the Novas we're throwing. And then the only 2 Watts that I have in my collection are super special to me. I have a prototype that Eric, the community manager at MVP, sent me of the Proto Watt, and then this was the guys at Overthrow did a special run of Watt stamps, and they sold out in like 15 seconds. So grateful to have one and have it signed. These were definitely both going to be wall hangers, but for the people and for the content, we got to go for it. So I'm going to throw the Novas first because I'm familiar with them, and here we're just trying to throw a flat standard shot, seeing how they feel. If I were to go on an immediate guess, I actually like on hand feel comparison, I love how the Watt feels in my hand. It's not too deep, but it's definitely not shallow. I would not describe it that way. So it feels really good. And Gyro, they've done really well on this injection point as opposed to these little random nubs that are on the bottom of the XT Nova. Here we go. First throws of the day. Let's see what we can do. Okay, as you can see, super straight, super point and click. Yeah. That one I almost got nervous that I was going to turn it over, and so they both just fly pretty dead straight. Like I said, it's not actually 264 feet. Let's try the Watt. I've actually not thrown the Watt, so this will be curious. It's got a decent amount, like put it up on a little bit of hyzer and it still had that turn, which I like. Okay, one thing I'm noticing immediately is the flight numbers of the Nova are 2300 and the Watt has 5 glide. And that's something I'm going to be very curious to continue to test, but I definitely feel like that Watt, I just put a little bit of height on it and it just sailed. So once again, we were afraid on this one, definitely left it shorter than we wanted, but always curious to me to make sure that we give it a chance and see how they putt. Okay. Honestly, not that bad. I'm gonna be real with you guys. When I first really got into, wow, okay. So we trusted the glide too much on that one. Gave away too much on the first one, and then we got scared. So we're trying to make adjustments as we go, and it's not working. When I first got into disc golf, funny story, the reason that I have so many XT Novas is that the first putter that I really fell in love with for putting putters are actually XT Novas, and I found what kept happening is this really rubbery edge, I kept crashing into things, like crashing into the cage, and then it would kick back and then get a big roll away. So I ended up swapping off of these, but first hole, initial impressions, very similar, both pretty point and click. I would say that the Watt's a little more stable. So we're gonna see how that holds up on our next hole, where we're gonna test them on hyzers hitting a line. Now coming in at 168 feet, you have a very obvious tunnel right down the middle, and you probably can't see it because of the shadows and whatnot, but through the gap right here, I can see the basket. So 168 feet, just a little stand-up hyzer. Really, you could push the disc pretty straight and it'd be fine, but a little bit of a hyzer finish is going to be key here. I think that the Watt is actually going to really shine here, but the beauty of the Nova is being a more neutral to understable disc than it appears like the Watt is right off the bat. I think that the Nova is going to have the ability to stand up, and if I put it on enough hyzer, it's going to stand up a little bit and then fall back down for that pushing hyzer. So let's see how the Watt does here. Once again, loving the glide on it, so I think I'm going to give it a chance, try to give it some height and see if we can't get in. Okay, I like that a lot. That felt super easy, super smooth to throw. I mean, this Watt is, get around that, get in. Whew. 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 That'd be crazy if we had an ace on one of these beginner battles. Gyro coming back with a vengeance. This neutron plastic is what they're both in, and I'm loving them a lot. Okay, so the Nova being a little more understable, like I said, I'm gonna have to put on a little bit more hyzer, especially if I want that hyzer finish. So not that much hyzer. We got so lucky, I cannot describe to you. We cut through like 4 different gaps. Get our tee box geometry a little better. Yeah, I always do that on this hole. It's 168 feet and I always throw it a little too hard and end up past the basket. I will say the Watt feels faster than the Nova, so I'm going to be very curious on approach shots, like if we don't get it all the way there, how easy it is on that little flick of the wrist up shot we've done with approach shots before. I know people have said that they're using the Watt to replace their glitch, just not sure on, like I said, those shorter up shots, if it actually is going to fill that slot. All right, so coming through, we have the Watt right here. Wow, that replay that one, Sci Guy. That was oh my goodness. I mean, that's like 8 quacks in one putt right there. That was so bad. I actually cannot tell you functionally what failed there, but answer, it was everything. It's fun being back with the XT Novas and getting to putt with them again. I think that's a fun vibe. Kind of like takes me back to, my putting form is also drastically different than it was when I was putting with XT Novas back in the day. Right now, I have to give the nod to the Watt. The amount of glide this thing has is insane, and that extra stability is nice. However, on a slower putter like this, a shot that I know the Beetle really shined in and the Glitch did well here too, is holding that anhyzer, how easily it stays in the anhyzer, or if it's trying to fight out. Because on these slower speed discs, one of the biggest perks to beginners being able to use them is shot shaping potential. So whether you can start it on a hyzer and let it stay on that hyzer, if you can throw it flat and it stays flat, or if you put it on anhyzer, how easily is it fighting out? Especially if you're a newer player and you have a lot of discs that are starting to go left for you as a right-handed player, having a disc that maybe the hole shapes to the right is easily being able to push it and get it up and over to go to the right could be huge. So this next hole, we're gonna head to hole 4 and see, can we actually hold an ante the whole way? All right, we're gonna tilt you up a little bit. 261 feet. The tee signs really are not great here in terms of distance. I normally will go a forehand peg up and around here. A lot of people can go the straight shot right up the gut, but we've done the Watt first, we've done the Nova first. We're gonna go Nova first again and give this a chance to kind of get up and over. The tricky part on this is this branch is kind of low, so we have to start it a little wider than we maybe want to. These tee pads are also raised up. I'm not gonna say too much about the tee pads because I actually like the tee pads here. Okay. You can see once that Nova got on the angle, it never really dreamed of coming off of it, which is actually quite nice. Okay, that one we didn't hit near as well. We didn't pull through on it. So that gives you a great example of one, we hit well and held the hyzer angle or the anhyzer angle, and then the other we didn't necessarily get a hold of as well, and because of that it just went straight. It didn't fight out though. I wouldn't say that faded out. I would just say it held like a pushing ante the whole way. I do think that this Watt though, if we don't hit it well, is going to fade out. Guys, that actually felt super good. I actually like the stability of this because it doesn't even think about really getting up all the way over on the anhyzer, which is nice. Okay, so we got a hold of both of those pretty well. Obviously the Nova, the second Nova, we didn't throw as well. Throwing the Watt, putting it on anhyzer intentionally, it stayed in it pretty nice. All the stability that I'm talking about, I think has been because I've been putting them on hyzer. So throwing them flat, I don't think that they have too much hook on them. So maybe eating my words on that. Okay, this is actually great, this tree being in the way, because we're gonna get the chance to kind of test that upshot potential on the Watt right here. So flick of the wrist upshot. That was so smooth. If you guys like your glitch and you're a big gyro person and you haven't thrown the Watt, don't, because you very quickly may not love your, like this may just be better. All right. Same story, same bat signal. In fact, when I first met Apollo Disc Golf, I met David in a tournament in Texas, and I was using the Nova for this shot at that time. And I'm obviously pretty out of practice with it. All right, another chance for like a 25, 30 footer with the Nova. Buckets. So this all actually ties up pretty evenly between the Watt and the Nova. Very, very interesting battle so far. I think you guys can kind of tell where my heart's leaning, which is crazy. And the Nova is a great disc. I think it's phenomenal. I'm just really feeling on this shot the lack of glide between the Nova versus the Spark. And you may argue that, well, the Nova is a little more shapeable, workable. This Watt so far is standing out pretty clearly in terms of that workability. I would say that I definitely threw the Watt harder and forced it in that anhyzer more than I did the Nova on that. Comparing my first Nova shot to the 2 Watt shots, I leaned into the Watt a lot harder. So we'll see. We're gonna try to throw true flat on this next gap shot. All right, 240 feet. Basket is dead straight right there. Gaps on left and right. You can go like, if you have a faster like mid-range or something, you can go the pure hyzer outside, but we're gonna try to just hit the gap. Watt's up once again, going first. Gonna try to release these flat. Now, I'm not Hunter in terms of I have to release everything on the extreme hyzer, but I do naturally release a lot of stuff on hyzer, so. Comments can let me know if that was flat. It felt very flat and it flew incredibly straight. Holy cannoli, Batman. ...240 feet and this thing isn't moving left or right at all. Gosh, that watt is such a good disc. I think my polecats are like a little worried. Okay, so try to throw that one flat. You could see it had a little more right movement with the Nova. Not as just true dead straight. And I'm noticing there, I feel like I threw all of them equally hard, equal power, all that. And I'm just noticing the power difference between when I really get a hold of the watt. That 5 glide is massive. Let's talk about what instances would I want a disc that glides less, because I think there are actually moments. Let's talk glide. So you can see both the Novas are short of the watts. This Nova landed about 35 feet. This is definitely stepper range, a little bit of headwind. Had headwind, so I couldn't really throw it straight at the basket. I knew it was gonna turn it. Man, that's just a little wacky today, isn't it? So if I was using this disc as my primary approach option, I think actually having a ton of glide on an approach putter can get squirrely, because if I'm trying to, let's say, get it close to the basket and has a ton of glide, it could overcarry a lot. It could be unreliable in heavier wind situations. So I think in that instance, the Nova really could shine. But if I'm using this as primarily a throwing putter, that I want just a dead straight throwing putter, like let's say the Proxy or something like that, I think having the extra glide is super helpful. I mean, you can see here that I'm stepping up to a 240-foot hole, and I got both the watts back to back, right close to each other, nailing a gap. And I can do that without even really feeling like I had to yam on this thing or give it the beans, as instead of, let's say, pulling a mid-range out for me personally, and then having to disc down on it or power down on it, which is honestly, I think for some people, and I might be one of those people, if I really have to power down too much, it becomes tougher to hit a gap anyways. So I think that that less glide is apparent, but if, like I said, you're a person who finds yourself over approaching quite often or throwing way too far and you can't seem to dial that in, having less glide could be a huge win for you. And like I said, when I learned that flick of the wrist upshot before I started bagging a bunch of polecats, the Nova was my disc of choice for that option. And I think it's a really good teaching disc, because it is a good disc diagnosis for how you're adjusting your form. But let's head to the last hole. We're gonna try to rip a couple and then give thoughts from there. All right, so 340 feet for our last hole, hole 18. These lovely gentlemen right here, I'm gonna throw over them. We're just gonna give these things a chance to really shine. Wide open space, nothing can go wrong here. We're just gonna try to crush them and see what we can do. Okay. So that's what happens when you put the beans into the first one. It turns over drastically, okay? So too much juice, try to overpower that one. Not good. Let's see if we can make the correction. Oh yeah, got him. Yeah, so didn't hit that one near as hard, so it makes sense that it didn't go as far. Let's see what the glide does on the spark. Way more nose up. Way more nose up, but you can see easy glide. Oh yeah. All right, so here we are at the scene of the crime of the overturned disc, overturned option. So here are final thoughts on XT Nova versus the Watt. The Nova, as you can see on that last hole, when I really tried to put the beans into it, off axis torque, whatever you want to call it, definitely hit it hard and then it just turned over. So when you overpower this thing, I would say this is definitely not an option that you're looking for, trying to throw max distance out there. If it's not a smoother controlled shot, the Nova kind of falls out of love. The Watt definitely had some torque resistance to it that I was not expecting, as well as some like really shapeable options. We think back to when I threw it on the Anheuser, it never felt like it was burning out. When I threw it on Heiser, it never felt like it was just immediately pushing. Had a lot of straight options. I think you could have seen this coming from a mile away, but the Watt is 100% gonna get the Robbie C BFB Best for Beginners stamp of approval. This thing is incredible, y'all. If you have not had the chance to try a Watt, I don't know what you're doing. Unless, like I said before, you really love your glitch and you don't want it to be in trouble or jeopardy, this could be the glitch killer. 100%. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this best for beginners. Next, we're moving on to, if we keep the speed thing going, we're going 3 speeds. So let me know in the comments below, what 3 speeds should we try out and compare as best for beginners? And if we shouldn't do that, I know I already have some mid-ranges in line that I want to try and think about. So definitely let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed this series, and hopefully you enjoy the watt. In the meantime, as always, I want to say thank you for watching. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.